when we look at the applications and solutions we have in production, we have a lot. So they have, in total, several thousand. Everything from small, sort of Lotus Notes kind of applications that somebody hacked together over a weekend or over an evening, to large-scale COBOL-based systems that have been in production for 25 years, to new things they're doing on mobile devices and on different browsers in order to attract clients. And they do a sort of health check of what they have, and they map it out somehow. In this case, you can map it out in terms of some of the functions of the software they're delivering. And they see things like in areas of clearing and settlement in the bank, they have 105 applications just in that one area. In the area of capturing transactions that happen across some wire between a client and maybe a set of systems, they have 62 applications. Down here more. This says accessing and managing balances and positions in various accounts. 96 applications, or 99 here. So their challenge is they have an awful lot of systems in an awful lot of technologies, and their management says to them, where could we make savings here? How could we be more effective? How can we move our resources into some different areas? Where should we develop new code? How should I take advantage of new things going on for web-based distributed systems? Where should I just close my eyes and hope it doesn't break? What should I be doing here in a complex environment such as this? So you say, well, okay, we can't answer that in the abstract, so show me what one of these systems looks like. This is what happened this week. And they show me a picture. And they say, do you think we should fix this? And I say, yeah, you should do that. Yeah, good idea, good idea. The systems are complicated. And they're complicated for lots of reasons we know. That we've been working on these systems for many years. They've been patched. They're a combination of technologies. There are many different organizations working to deliver these, including lots of system integrators, specialist software providers, the organization themselves. In this case, there are about 1,000 people in IT and in information technology as a whole. Only 150 of those belong to the bank themselves. 500 work for an Indian system integrator, mostly offshore. About 150 so they're doing general work on the projects. About 150 are IBM people. We're responsible for testing. You can see why we have some problems. We have about another 130 people who work for another system integrator that's a specialist in one of their platforms, one of their banking platforms. And there are about 100 people who are different contractors of different kinds with specialist skills. And this is the management that they have to make about which software should we change when? How should we manage it? Where do we invest? If we want to change to a new technology, what's the implication of this? So it's a complicated situation that we have to address. So let's step back for a second and say, we've been writing software for some time now. Why do projects fail? When we look back and we do some post-mortem on projects, what's the usual reasons why there are challenges? And you can look at lots of interesting materials. These 3 books I find very valuable. Capers-Jones materials. He's got some of the best data about what happens in real projects. He's the king of function points. So he does lots of function point analysis, and he slices and dices projects, saying in certain projects that are more agile or waterfall or COBOL or Java, what kind of patterns of productivity and failure do we see? And he's got an enormous amount of data about that. There are some folks looking at the economics of software quality and in general about development of various styles. This is another one by Capers-Jones and some people. This is by Walker-Royce and some others, Kirk Bittner and others. There is lots of material that says why projects fail. And I bet you probably in all of your classes in colleges and so on have written these lists for yourselves. Why projects fail. And lots of this is about not necessarily we didn't know which technology to choose. The new edition of Java wasn't up to scratch. We used the wrong interface. It's about the requirements. It's about quality control. It's about tracking the project. It's about being able to understand the cost estimates and knowing that at some point the money's going to run out. It's about the promises made and the expectations that you set up and whether you can deliver against them, and on and on and on. These numbers come from some of the Capers-Jones work. So we know that the challenges here are about the way in which we manage and deliver the software as teams and as people. So there's different ways we can look at this. I'm not sure if this little visualization will work here, but let me show it. Because as my kids say, "Molo mon pon." This is what my kids tell me. So let me show you. If we were to take some of the code that we deliver inside Rational, and we were to look at this code base over a period of a week and say, how has it changed over a period of a week? Who touched it? Where was it touched? What branches and new fixes did we create? You can run the logs of that change against some visualization technologies and not see anything. Let me try this once more, and then we'll see if it works. Play with this. So this is a very simple visualization of the code changes for 1 week on one of our code bases. And all the names here are the people touching it. Red things are fixes. The blue things are updates. The green things are requests for enhancements. And these are all of the work items hitting the code base for one of our products. If you weren't worried before about buying our products, you should be now. So you can see Saturday and Sunday, things get a bit quiet. In IBM land, things get quiet on Saturdays and Sundays. Then Monday starts to pick up again. We're reaching 8 o'clock in the morning. All hell breaks loose as people start to work on this code base. Look at all of the variants, all of the different changes, all of the branches being created, the bundling up of fixes on code. Just in a 1 week period, this is what's happening to one of our code bases. This is what's happening to commercial code bases all over the world every day. And it's this change that is really, really hard to deal with and manage. What makes it even, I hope you like the visualization. I'm saying my kids liked it. They thought it was fun. They didn't know what it was, but they thought it was fun. One of the interesting things about this is it's not just complicated because lots of people are touching our code. More and more, our teams are quite complicated in how they're organized. So if you take most organizations now of more than a few people, they're distributed. They're distributed in a building, several floors. They're distributed in several buildings on a campus. They're distributed over multiple sites in a city or in a country. And more, of course, they're distributed globally, using resources offshore. In this case, this is a very simple high-level schematic that says we've got some on-site people in Europe, in Western Europe, some Eastern Europeans. We use a lot of teams, of course, in places like Czech Republic and some of the former Soviet countries. There's a lot of developers over in those areas with specialist skills. And we use a lot of teams, not just in India and China, but now, of course, a lot in Latin America. We're moving into other areas like Vietnam because the cost base around developing code is so important to most large organizations. So you take a simple way of looking at this. Let's suppose we have 3 sites, and we break it up into the normal things we do in creating software. And we do a very simple schematic of how we're going to use the sites. The first thing that a picture like this does is it says, every vertical and horizontal line here is a communication issue. Every vertical and horizontal line says somebody has got to tell somebody else what's going on. They've got to hand them something, a piece of code, a document, a specification, a test script, or they need to communicate and tell them what's going on. We need to synchronize something. We need to share something. We need to work on a common artifact. Every vertical and horizontal line becomes critical. And the more these schemes get more complicated, the more you start to have to deal with those. This is why it's so much easier for 10 people in a room to develop software than 100 people in 12 locations. Because every line implies some sort of communication. And if we're in the room together, we can be very effective in saying, did you fix that? Because I've got to do this now. What do we have to do next? What did you do this morning? Oh, you're not going to be in tomorrow. I can deal with that. That's why trying to work together in tight teams has a different dynamic. But you can't do that when you're separated in time and space in terms of how your team is organized. Most organizations make this even more complicated because they use contractors and external organizations. So all of these are split. And often in most of the organizations I deal with, they use multiple system integrators. And you know how much system integrators love each other, so they don't tell each other anything. And in fact, if one system integrator does something one way, another one will do it a different way just on purpose to make it hard for them. So this gets even more complicated. We're not necessarily all working on the same team all the time. So this is the kind of environment that we have to deal with when we talk about, oh yeah, now make me agile. Okay. Okay. This sounds easy. So this is the summary. Complexity. The processes are not so easy to understand. The teams are quite diverse. And the technology isn't always fitting together as well as it should. And it's a variety of things from many places. Open source, commercial, hand-built. So what happened? So what happened was about 10 years ago, this was about 10 or 11 years ago, the Agile Manifesto, was a sort of reaction to a number of things that have been happening in the industry. Many of you would have seen things like the capability maturity model, the move towards lean development. There was a lot of focus on improving the management of how you deliver. Improving management usually means one of two things: high governance or high control through metrics. So what happened with a lot of these schemes that were put in place was more reports, more spreadsheets, more people looking over your shoulder, less ability to innovate and do the things you needed to do without 4 people signing it off. So these ideas of improving and governance were the right ways to think, but they were implemented often in very difficult ways for teams to feel comfortable, to feel effective, to feel like they could make a difference. So you see lots of material from Tom DeMarco and others talking about death march projects, where 6 months are spent creating the plan. The plan becomes something they print on a wall that's this long, and they say, on the 12th of December, 2013, you'll be checking in this code. Yeah, right. We don't know what we're doing next week. But if you want to believe on the 12th of December 2013 we'll be doing this, you believe that, if that's what you want to believe. And we go ahead with these sorts of plans to deliver. Because management wanted that kind of, in quotes, comfort and risk reduction. But to many situations, this was a very false sense of security. So what happened was a number of people started to see this and say, what's going on here? And what seems to be going on is, again, they didn't say these things were wrong. They said, we value these things over these things whenever we can do so. Things like these processes and tools are very important to us, but we know software is written by people. People have to interact. People need to understand and have experience and skills. They have to be comfortable with what they're doing. They have to be comfortable with the people we're working with. If you don't have that, it's very difficult to say, 12 people who've never met each other are now going to build this. You're not going to have any structure or control. Now go ahead and do it. You get the results you expect. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Some years ago, it's less true now. I would go and do a lot of software architecture kind of reviews. And you'd go to a company, and they'd sit down, and they'd give you a stack of documents. Normally it was documents. And they'd say, we've just completed 273 use cases. Look how good we are. Now, and they expected you to spend the next 3 days looking through this and say, that's great. So what tended to happen was you'd say, OK, show me what you've got running. And they'd say, running? We haven't finished the use cases yet. We can't code. The coding guys aren't ready yet till we sign this off. Get the budget. And then we'll start coding. And then in 6 months, we'll go make sure it was all OK. Projects are much less like that now. The value of what you get is, can you show me something? Show me it working. Show it, if you can, to the stakeholders, to the end user. And not say, no, you signed off on this. This is what you're getting. And we'll have a big legal fight at the end if you said it's not what you wanted, because this is what you signed for, which is the way many contracts are run, many large projects will run. And the final thing is, as I showed you with that little video, you have to expect change. The plan is there to help guide you. It's not there to stop you changing. And many people got this the wrong way around, and they said, we've defined the plan, we can't change. So this became a big push in the community to say, how do we understand that these things have some value, but they can't be overwhelmed when you really have to work and deliver solutions in practice? So this was the starting point. But in this kind of context that I mentioned, so I said I had a bad week last week. I had an even worse week the week before. I was with another large telecommunications company. And these come from this telecommunication company. And what's interesting, this is up in Finland. And they've completely revolutionized how they work. This is a large organization creating handsets and creating base stations and wireless infrastructure and all those things. And there aren't too many left in Scandinavia for you to guess who it is. And what they've done is they've completely revolutionized how they start to deliver software. So, for example, when they started a project, these are big projects. This isn't 5 or 10 people. It's a room like this with this number of people. And they would have some idea of the architectural components, and they'd have like little stations, rather like the desks outside with the companies there in the corners. And they'd say, go see which project, which part of this you want to work on. Seriously, this is how they started. Go talk to these guys and form teams. And by tomorrow, once you form teams, we're going to start on working on this system. Now, this is quite different than most commercial organizations in how software gets delivered. So they start to work in this way. And then they reconfigure the building to say, OK, we've organized into these 10 teams with these people in. Go organize the rooms. Well, it's actually an open area. Go organize the workstation areas. They build task boards. They put materials on these task boards. They start to work on they start to work in a very different way than they did. This is how they said they used to work. This is how they work now. And it's a very different sense of how projects are being organized. So to some degree, all those books from 5 to 10 years ago, the software engineering books by Ian Somerville and all of those things, they're all wrong. Don't read them. It's changing quite substantially how people are looking at what software development means, how teams work together, what effective software delivery means. So there's a real paradox right now between the control aspects and the governance and the engineering aspects and the delivery of quality, innovative code into production. And most commercial organizations are really in a hard situation right now, understanding how this fits together for these reasons. Now, if you go to this large organization here, this large telecommunications organization, and you say, this sounds great, how much of your organization works like this? They kind of mumble a little bit, right? Not much. But what they do is they say, this is the role model. This is what we want to move towards as we go along. And they're very much pushing people like us, vendors like us, to say, this is what we want to do. Help us do it. This is how we want to work. This is the kind of interactivity we want. This is the kind of empowerment we want for our teams. So it's a very different way of working. So the focus for them and for Agile in this context tends to be, when you boil all of this nice words down, what does it really mean they do? Collaboration becomes absolutely critical, how people move and work together. If it works for you to have stickers on a wall, use stickers on a wall and use Kanban and task boards. If you're not in the same room, you can't work in that way. There are other things you can do. You can provide electronic versions of that. You can share using other mechanisms. But collaboration becomes critical. Tying together very interactive, real-time collaboration techniques with the ability for you to connect to the data and the materials that you're working on in real time becomes really critical. The automation is absolutely essential here. So if you're going to move quickly and have your team make decisions quickly, what you can't do is say, well, we're not quite sure if the integration's right because the build broke the last 3 nights. OK, well, if you're doing a 1-week sprint, 3 nights without a build actually is pretty difficult for you to finish that sprint. So things like that become critical. Having to write tests by hand and run regression tests by hand becomes really a time waster. You have to put automation around that. So build engines, continuous integration, regression testing, all of those kind of things become absolutely critical because they just get in your way. The third thing is, if you want to move quickly in teams and be agile and flexible and react to the market, you better have some idea of where you are and what decisions you're making and where this is taking you. And right now, we don't do a great job there. So if you go to most commercial software projects and you say, tell me, what metrics do you keep? If I was to say to you, where are you right now? What would you show me? If you get a chance to do that, it's quite interesting. They can sometimes show you function points per developer per month or lines of code. They can sometimes show you something to do with schedule and then whether they hit schedules, and usually it's red. And they can show you something to do with defect density, how many defects they find when they find them. Not too much more. You start to ask them some more difficult questions about traceability of what test coverage do you have over requirements? You might not have so much of a good answer. Tell me a little bit about velocity, how quickly you're moving and how consistently across releases you're moving. They don't tend to have a good idea. Tell me a little bit about the trends of the defects in the code. And the big word that people use today is technical debt. How much technical debt do you have in your code? How many problems are you leaving yourself for the future to deal with when you ship this code? How would you know that this isn't going to blow up in 2 weeks, that you're going to have to put a whole bunch of people on it next month? This is a big thing for people, and we don't have great ideas here about what to do. There's a lot of work now going on here to increase visibility and to increase our ability to measure. So these three tend to be where the focus is. And techniques that you'll see around Scrum and Crystal and DSDM and those methods are about these three things in different kinds of contexts. So whenever you see those ideas of backlogs and test-driven development and making sure that you have empowered teams and whole team thinking, look at all of those things from the context of these three things. Do they help me collaborate more effectively? Are they helping me to automate the routine things? And do they help me get better visibility into my project and where I am and where I'm going? And then the final focus are these four areas. For most of the organizations I talk to that say they're going Agile, you go talk to them, and what that means is a few guys went on a week course and became Scrum Masters or something like that. The difference is how they behave. So the way they behave is, what do they measure and what do they look at? Is it about outcome or is it about output? Most of the things, for example, in IBM a couple of years ago was all about output. How many lines of code did you produce this week? How many defects did you fix? It's those sorts of things that were the most important. It's becoming much more about outcome. What did you get to the customer? What was the feedback? How many new features are in production? How much revenue are we making? For us as a commercial organization, outcome should be much more important than output. Of course, output is easier to measure, which is why most of the measures are focused on this. Empowered teams over resourcing. One of the worst things that ever happened in places like IBM and other companies is you start to get talked about as a resource. We're going to move 5 resources over here. No, they're people. They're not resources, they're people with friends and lives and mortgages, and they're people. So you can't just do that. So what started to happen is people are looking at this and saying, if I had to start a project tomorrow and I had a choice of how I would control the project, the most important choice I would make is which people are going to work on the project. So let's try to think about that and deal with that in a realistic way. So empowered teams become very important to how software gets delivered. So I was working with an insurance company a couple of weeks ago, and they do a lot of offshoring to one of the Indian consultants. And they say, we get about 5-to-1 cost reduction. Literally, it's 1/5 of the price. If they pay €1 in India, they pay €5 in Europe. So of course they're using offshored resources. They say, when we go and say how much will it cost to do this work, and they give an estimate, they give us estimates that are 10 times the size. So we lose all of the improvement we could have got. Because most of the people that they're dealing with aren't experts in the domain. There's a big communication gap. They're not necessarily always the best people. They have a turnover of 50% a year. A year. In 2 years, none of the same people work there. Because they're all moving around from one organization to the other trying to get the best deal they can, and it's a very vibrant market. So all of this has a huge impact. Prioritizing over planning. This idea of having a plan on the wall and so on is great. But you have to constantly understand your priorities and reprioritize and use the plan as a guide. Not do it the other way around. Not say, we can't change this plan because the financial guy wouldn't like it. The project planner wouldn't go for this. You have to try and understand what the priorities are all the time. And features over projects. As you know, what tends to happen is we tend to focus around projects and programs we're working on. So one of the hardest things to do in any commercial organization is kill a project because somebody is vested in this project. That I started that 5 years ago. My friends work on that. It's really critical. We know a customer that I promised it would. So it's very hard. So what we have to do is start to say, what's more important is delivering features or services to our consumers, to our users. The projects are a mechanism. They're a mechanism for organization of delivering those features into production. So we see a lot more now talking about cross-functional teams, about teams being focused on delivery of capabilities into production. And the projects are de-emphasized because projects can change in structure. And this has a greater flexibility of the way things are funded, the way things are managed, the way things are delivered. So when you go to an organization and they say, we're agile, don't ask them, do you do Scrum, do you have backlogs, or do you do Crystal? Ask them these things. What do you measure? What do you value? How do your teams work, and how would you think about when you have to change the priorities and the staffing of an organization? What would you do? What do you think about in terms of planning? How do you think about planning? How do you replan? And ask also about how they're organizing their teams and the way they work. And you get a pretty good idea whether they're agile or not. Whether or not they use the word Scrum or any other word, you'll get a pretty good idea of whether they're thinking from an agile perspective. I'm not going to go through the agile ideas, mostly because we don't have too much time to go through all of it. But the basic ideas of agility, the basic structure of a method around this is more or less always around a sort of basic Scrum idea, which says there are a whole bunch of things we need to do, a long list of things. We pick some, we put them into an iteration or a sprint. We do those in a fairly rapid way, normally between 2 to 6 weeks. And we have daily views of where we are to make sure that we do early intervention of any challenges. And at the end of this period, we're able to show something working. So I see lots of projects that say we're iterative or we're agile. What they've done is they've taken a waterfall and they've split it into chunks. And at the end of each of these chunks, they're no more further ahead than they were at the beginning of the chunk. But because they've split it into pieces, they're now iterative or they're agile. The demonstration of when you're agile is when you show something that you could ship in theory. That's the ultimate. At the end of each sprint, you could ship this. And in fact, for some of you who know some of the IBM technologies, we have one of our largest technologies is called KICS, and it's a big transaction processing system, been around for many years. We're trying to make KICS agile. And this is an incredible change in thinking to an organization working on a large code base. And one of the definitions is, at the end of each sprint, could they ship the thing? If they couldn't, they're not agile. So that's our only definition that we're trying to push towards. At the end of each sprint, could they ship? If they're doing that and they're working in that way, we believe they're moving in an agile fashion. Now, you could argue against that, but it's a simple mechanism for us to use in that particular project. And then retrospectives in order for us to rethink the set of items that we start to work on. So that's okay as a basic structure, a basic idea of backlogs and sprints and organizing priorities. But there's a whole bunch of things you have to do in order to deliver. It's not simply about the backlog and the sprint. It's about the set of activities that you will do. You can draw various maps around this. For some of our projects, these are the things that become most important for us. We're dealing with a series of milestones. We're delivering commercial software. So when you go to some of our projects, you'll see that what we focus on is those milestones. So if I go to, so maybe I should do this very quickly. Suppose you wanted to see our project dashboards right now, and you said, okay, you're so smart about agile development, show me your teams, show me what they're doing. So what we've done is all of our project dashboards are live online. And this is another risky business. So you can see all of the bugs, all of the priorities, all of the planning for all of our software tools from Rational online. So if you go to jazz.net, you can go and you can get a login for free, and then you can go see our project dashboards. And it's very interesting to see how we're about 2,000 people in development across the world in Rational. So you can go see how we're organized, how we're delivering our software, what metrics we use. It's very interesting, particularly for those of you who are students or doing some level of study. If you want to see some real examples, you can go do that. So you can go and you can say, let's pick a project. I'll just take 2 minutes to do this. Let's pick one of our products, which is Rational Team Concert. And let's go see its current dashboard. ¿Cuántos minutos tengo?
10.
Aha, thank you.
10 minutes.
Thank you. So let's quickly look at the project dashboard. So this is an agile kind of lifecycle management solution that we use, and we're building an agile lifecycle management solution, so we're using it to build it, if you get my drift. So this is the release that's coming out in June is RTC 4.0. And this is the development dashboard. This is the general overview dashboard. Obviously, normally you would customize these things, but just to show you guys, I'm showing you each of the different tabs, if it loads. And what you can see is various things like the different releases, the different milestones. Milestone 7, milestone 8. Milestone 8 is the most recent release. You can see the various things like SVT is the system verification tests. You can look at what we're doing for retrospectives in order to do some improvements over our processes and practices. Each of these things are the bugs or the fixes or the requests for enhancements that have been put into the system by various people. So we can just pick one, and if you hover over, let's see if there's anything interesting here. Discrepancy between all plans in team artifacts view in 2 different places in the Eclipse client. You can see it's a defect, a severity. It hasn't been assigned yet. It was created by this person. There's subscribers to this who are interested in the different event and what might happen. There might be some description down here about what it was and how to reproduce it. There's a screenshot. This is how we use our tools. This is how other people are starting to use these tools as a collaboration kind of dashboard. We can go and look at some things like, let's go and look at this milestone that I mentioned. Let's look at milestone 8. This is the latest milestone, and as I say, we're supposed to be delivering this into production in June. So let's see where we are. These are the various sets of features or components. This is a product that works within a Visual Studio client as well as in an Eclipse client. So we can see our latest dashboards in terms of the burn down, the different closing rates that we have. This is what our teams use in order to see where they are. This is not faked up data. This is how we manage. There is nothing else for our teams to coordinate and manage. If we have stand-up meetings or reviews, we show these dashboards because our teams are not in the same location. We have a lot of development all over the world. So you can go and you can look at these for yourselves, and you'll see the sorts of things we're doing and how we're using our technologies. You can look at lots of other things. I won't go through some of the requests. These are requests for enhancements. APARs are emergency fixes. Accessibility, there are lots of requirements on our interfaces, blah, blah, blah. So go take a look, and you'll see the way we're using our products. The other thing you can see is you can see our planning. So you can go and you can look at the current plans. And you can go see what's the current plan for this release. What's the timing and so on. So there's a few things that are interesting here. Why did we do this? Why do we put this on the web? Well, the first reason, the obvious reason is we sell these products, right? We want people to see how they work. So there's a promotional kind of idea. But let's put that to one side. The most important thing is we need to work with our clients so that they can see and interact with us. The biggest thing that's happened to us in the last 2 or 3 years about software delivery is the expectations of our users have changed. This is the biggest change. It's not about a technology. It's not about how we work. The expectations of the people who consume our software have changed. It's not good enough for us to say, we'll get it in the next release, see you in 3 months. It's not good enough. Maybe it never was. But it's certainly not good enough now. They say, I want to see, where in the backlog is it? Which build is it in? Who's working on it? I want to see the discussion about it. I may even want to contribute to it. So what's a market? A market is a conversation. A conversation means there needs to be interaction. So we've completely changed how we approach, how we deliver, and what we deliver. We have a lot to learn still, but we're moving in the right direction. So you can look at some plans here like, let's take this. There's some red on this one. Let's have a look at this. Let's look at this plan for, I don't even know what PRT 4.0 is, but hopefully we soon will. What's interesting about the planning is you'll see that the plans can be viewed from multiple perspectives. This is a work breakdown structure, a classic work breakdown structure view. Most of our people who manage projects still want a work breakdown structure. But we could try and look at it in other ways. The same information. So for example, a lot of people want to see a task board view. Show me the tasks that are in flight. Show me those that are the stories we have, with the ones that are open, the ones that are in progress, and the ones that are closed, as a classic sort of task board that you might have on a wall. Of course, we are distributed teams. We can't stick them on a wall, although often people do and send photos. We much prefer to have some sort of interactive view. And each of these tasks now has some coloring that tells you where we are, which team is doing it, how many hours have been spent on it, we have a view of this from multiple perspectives. Classic views, views based on users, views based on a traditional task board, moving of stickers around. This is the way in which Agile teams are moving. You'll see other vendors out there, like Atlassian, have tools that are similar. You'll see others that are producing tools that are working in the same way. This is a classic way projects are changing. I won't go through more of it. I say help yourself, go see what people are doing. So I'm going to do one more thing. You've seen some of the task boards. So this tends to be how our projects work. When the teams come in the morning, they see the dashboard. They see a project dashboard which says 7 days remaining to some milestone. This is the team we have in Zurich. We have an office there. You can see some of the graphs here. You can see some of the outstanding items. You'll see some of the events, some things that might have occurred overnight from the team that might be in another part of the world, and the builds and where we are. And you can see the burn down here. So when they come in, they see where they are. They work in a common way. These dashboards are how we operate. So I'm going to go to the last comment here. I won't go through the other 174 slides. You're okay. So agility is a set of ideas about how you can operate, but it's a way in which you change your thinking. It's the way in which you operate in a different style. The tools and the technologies can help, but like most things, if you don't know what you're doing, getting a new tool isn't going to help you. For those of you, I used to do some photography. Whenever my photography wasn't going so well, I knew what I needed to do. Buy a new camera. Of course you do. With more pixels, with a better lens. No, you need to learn how to take better photographs with the camera you've got. The camera may help you for certain things. If you're doing a special kind of photography, perhaps you need some particular capabilities. Most of all, you need to know how to work with the equipment you have. So it's very important that people change behaviors and understand how their behaviors can be supported by the technology. Here's what we've seen. When people want to scale Agile, there are sets of things you have to work on. About your goals, about how you're going to scale, about how you measure, about how you think about quality, and about how you deliver into production. These are the critical areas when organizations are looking at agility and saying, I like that Scrum idea. I know there are 10 guys down the hallway that seem to be very excited coming in the morning and there are lots of stickers on their wall. How do I make that work over here? It's not always as easy as simply saying, great, let's take them on a Scrum course. There's a lot of change in attitude and behavior that is needed. So I'm going to stop here just so that there's a minute or two for questions en inglés o en castellano o otros idiomas, pero no puedo contestar.
¿Estas presentaciones están disponibles en algún sitio?
It can be. I can put it in Dropbox, or I can put it on a stick, or I can do something else. What would you like? How about I put it here? The easiest one for me to put it on without getting IBM in the middle, which means it would take 3 months, is to put it in alanbrown.net. If you go there, I'll put it there, okay? Eventually it'll be in IBM in 3 months. They probably will have taken out all of the good slides and they'll charge you. Or you can go there. Take your pick. I don't mind. Yes. ¿Sí? Sí puedo.
De cara a la comunicación, esos gaps de comunicación, sobre todo con equipos que están offshore y eso, de alguna manera, ¿cuáles, según tu experiencia, de acuerdo, cuáles serían las prácticas más quick wins?
Yeah.
Estoy refiriendo de cara, sobre todo, a realizarlo y tener un resultado que de alguna manera al final haga convencer a la gente por sí mismo, por evidencias de que esto puede ser bueno.
So as you may not have heard, the comment is about offshore teams and the communication and which are the best practices. It's a complicated question to answer quickly. The most important thing that we've found is we reorganize the teams. We used to simply say offshore teams are a coding team separated from the main team. We'll do a bunch of stuff and we'll send them stuff to do. When they've done it, they'll send it back. That doesn't work very well in most projects that we work on. So we have to start to change the organization. And a team becomes an integrated team in total, where people are part of the team from beginning to end, They're part of the design, they're part of the delivery, they're part of the testing. So we try and have multiple function people as much as we can in the teams, including people offshore. And we try and then use some of the technologies that we have and others have, including chat, including, you know, the more sophisticated check-in, check-out and control, running scans across code. There's a whole bunch of things we can do that will make that easier. But the most important thing is the way the team actually interacts. And we've had to change that quite substantially in order to get real productivity. There's some very good discussions by people even like, read some things by Martin Fowler about how to do offshore development, some very nice things about Agile and offshore. I have to stop here. I'm getting a sort of hook thing. So go to that address and you'll find the slides somewhere pointed from that page, or come and ask me and I'll give you them on a stick or something. Thank you.